Time travel has long fascinated humanity. We tend to see it as a linear progression, moving only forward. But what if our understanding of time is fundamentally wrong? Could there be mechanisms within the laws of physics that allow us to reverse or rewind moments in time? From scientific theories to inexplicable anecdotes, the field of time travel has inspired both wonder and skepticism. Here, we delve deep into 20 fascinating stories of alleged time travelers, combining scientific insight with extraordinary details. Number 20. The Moberly-Jourdain Incident, a glimpse of Marie Antoinette in 1901. On August 10, 1901, two women, Charlotte Anne Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain, visited the famous Palace of Versailles while vacationing in France. Initially unimpressed by the Grand Palace, they decided to explore the gardens, making their way to the Petit Trianon, a small chateau on the grounds. That's when things took an unusual turn. As they walked, they noticed a strange change in the atmosphere. The air grew still and heavy. Then, the women started seeing people dressed in old-fashioned clothing, as if from the 18th century. The figures they saw appeared more like wax statues than real people, including a man with a pockmarked face and a woman calmly sketching in the garden. Later, Charlotte claimed that this woman was none other than Marie Antoinette herself. What makes their story so compelling is their background. Both women came from well-respected families. Charlotte's father was George Moberly, former headmaster of Winchester College and Bishop of Salisbury, and Charlotte herself was the first principal of St. Hugh's College, Oxford. Eleanor's father was Reverend Francis Jourdain, the vicar of Ashbourne, Derbyshire, and she later became Charlotte's assistant. Given their reputation, it seems unlikely that these women would invent such a wild story. In fact, they didn't even discuss the strange experience with each other until a week later, and only after confirming each other's memories did they return to Versailles, hoping to make sense of it all. Despite retracing their steps multiple times, they never found the same path, structures, or people again. Some landmarks they remembered didn't exist at all. In 1911, a decade later, their experience was published in a book called An Adventure. While skeptics doubted their claims, many were convinced that Charlotte and Eleanor had unknowingly slipped back in time to the era of Marie Antoinette. Number 19. Couple from 1979 visits a mysterious hotel from the early 1900s. In October 1979, two British couples, Len and Cynthia Gisby, along with Jeff and Pauline Simpson, set out on a holiday road trip through France. Little did they know, they would return with a story that seemed more like science fiction than a simple vacation. As they traveled through the French countryside, fatigue set in, and the couples decided to find a place to stay for the night. They soon came across a charming, old-fashioned hotel near Montélimar. Tired and grateful to rest, they didn't immediately notice how peculiar the hotel was. Instead of glass windows, the rooms had heavy wooden shutters. The beds had no pillows, just rough calico sheets. Even the door locks seemed outdated, secured by old-fashioned latches instead of modern keys. The strangeness continued the next morning. After having breakfast in a dining room that seemed right out of the early 1900s, they were only charged 19 francs for their stay, a surprisingly low amount, even for the 1970s. When they asked for directions to the nearest autoroute, the local police didn't seem to understand the term, adding to the feeling that something wasn't quite right. On their return trip to the UK, the couples decided to revisit the hotel. To their shock, it had completely disappeared. They couldn't find any trace of it. To make matters even stranger, when they developed their holiday photos, all the pictures of the hotel were missing, as if the place had never existed. How could an entire hotel, complete with staff and other guests, vanish without a trace? Some believe the couples had experienced a time slip, briefly stepping into a world from the past. Number 18. The Mysterious Time Traveler from 2036. On November 2, 2000, a user going by the name Time Travel Zero appeared online, setting off one of the most bizarre and intriguing internet mysteries of the early 21st century. The user, who soon revealed his name as John Titer, claimed to be a time traveler from the year 2036 on a mission to retrieve an important piece of technology from the past, a 1975 IBM 5100 computer. Titer explained that this outdated computer was needed in the future to help debug critical software systems facing a major crisis. According to him, the world of 2036 was vastly different from the year 2000. He predicted that the United States would soon descend into civil war, starting in 2004 and culminating in World War III by 2015, a conflict that would lead to the deaths of nearly 3 billion people and leave the U.S. divided into small, self-sufficient communities. Titer's posts were filled with detailed explanations, not only about his future, but also about the technology of time travel. He claimed his time machine was built by General Electric and housed in a 1967 Chevrolet Corvette. He even cited quantum physics, particularly the Everett Wheeler model, to explain how his time travel had created a new timeline, which is why some of his predictions might not align with our present reality. Although many of his predictions, such as the Civil War, didn't come true, John Titer's story captivated thousands of people. His technical knowledge and the way he described his experiences made him a compelling figure. To this day, the name John Titer remains a topic of discussion in both physics and time travel theories, long after his mysterious disappearance from the internet. Number 17. A future air raid. Foreseen by a newspaper reporter in 1932. In 1932, British journalist J. Bernard Hutton and his photographer Joachim Brandt were on assignment in Hamburg, Germany. Their task was to document the bustling shipyard of Blohm and Voss. However, their day took a terrifying turn. Without warning, the peaceful atmosphere was shattered by the wailing of air raid sirens. In the distance, they could hear bombers approaching, followed by the deafening sound of explosions. Buildings were struck, fires blazed, and debris flew everywhere. It was an air raid. In a desperate bid for safety, Hutton and Brandt ran for cover, with Brandt managing to capture several photographs of the chaos. Once the air raid subsided, the two emerged from their hiding places, shaken by the destruction they had witnessed. Yet, when they returned to their office and developed the photographs, they were stunned to discover that the images showed no signs of devastation. Instead, the photos portrayed a serene, normal day at the shipyard. No fires, no destruction, and no air raid. Confused and disturbed, Hutton and Brandt recounted their experience, but few believed their incredible story. After all, the shipyard appeared perfectly fine. For years, the event lingered as an unsettling mystery until July 24, 1943. On that day, Hamburg endured a massive Allied bombing campaign known as Operation Gomorrah, resulting in devastation that mirrored what Hutton and Brandt had seen over a decade earlier. Eerily, the air raid they experienced in 1932 became a grim reality 11 years later. Despite various theories attempting to explain their experience, no conclusive answers have emerged. Number 16. Air Marshal Sir Robert Victor Goddard's Time Slip Air. Marshal Sir Robert Victor Goddard was a distinguished officer in the Royal Air Force, known not just for his military service, but also for his encounters with the unexplained. In 1935, as a wing commander, he was tasked with inspecting airfields across the UK, including a long-abandoned site near Edinburgh called Dream. Upon flying over Dream, Goddard observed a neglected airfield overrun with weeds and crumbling buildings. After completing his inspection, he encountered a fierce storm on his return flight. Buffeted by strong winds and heavy rain, he was forced to circle back over Drem to regain his bearings. To his astonishment, as the storm suddenly cleared, Goddard found the airfield transformed. It was now fully operational. The buildings were freshly painted, the runways were immaculate, and 4 aircraft sat on the tarmac. Notably, 3 of the aircraft sported a yellow livery, unusual for the RAF at the time. and one was of a type he couldn't identify. Baffled yet intrigued, Goddard landed safely and shared his bizarre experience with colleagues. Unsurprisingly, they dismissed his account as a fabrication. However, in 1939, just 4 years later, Drem Airfield was refurbished and reopened as a fully functional airbase. The aircraft he had seen, including those in yellow, were now standard issue, and the entire airfield matched the scene he had witnessed during that fateful flight in 1935. Number 15. A time traveler who met his older self. When getting to know someone, a classic question often arises: what would you tell your younger self? For most, this remains a hypothetical musing, but for Swedish man Håkan Nordqvist, it became a bizarre reality. In 2006, Nordqvist claimed to have experienced something straight out of a science fiction narrative. He met his future self. The encounter unfolded unexpectedly while he was tackling a mundane household issue, fixing a leak under his kitchen sink. As he crawled beneath the sink to access a tricky pipe, he found himself not facing plumbing problems, but rather stepping into what can only be described as a tunnel. This tunnel transported him to the year 2042, where he encountered a 72-year-old version of himself. The two men, his present self and future self, spent time sharing stories and comparing life experiences. Remarkably, they discovered they both bore identical tattoos on their arms, a detail captured in a blurry video that stirred significant debate. The footage shows two men, one younger, one older, displaying the same tattoo on their forearms. Nordqvist's tale quickly circulated online, attracting both intrigue and skepticism. Critics pointed out that the video could have been staged, perhaps involving an older relative or special effects. Yet, Nordqvist didn't pressure anyone to believe him. He simply wanted to share his experience and let others draw their own conclusions. Number 14. The story of Sergey Ponomarenko, who fell through time into 2006. In 2006, the streets of Kyiv, Ukraine, were disturbed by the presence of a disoriented man clad in outdated clothing, clutching an old-fashioned camera. He identified himself as Sergey Ponomarenko, claiming to have been born in 1932, utterly bewildered by the modern world around him. Local authorities approached Sergey, noting his evident confusion. He insisted he was merely walking in his hometown, yet somehow found himself in an unfamiliar time. Taken in for questioning, his story only grew stranger. Sergey recounted that the last thing he remembered was photographing an unusual object in the sky, a large disc-shaped UFO, before everything went black. Upon regaining consciousness, he was in a completely different era. The situation took a turn when authorities developed the film from Sergey's camera. The photographs, undeniably from the 1950s, depicted typical scenes of that era in Kyiv, showcasing cars, buildings, and people dressed in period attire. Furthermore, the camera itself was confirmed to be a model from the 1950s, nearly impossible to find in modern-day Ukraine. What heightened the mystery was that Sergey's personal documents, including his identification and other paperwork, matched records from the 1950s. Yet, after his brief time in 2006, Sergey Ponomarenko vanished without a trace, leaving no clues as to where or when he might have gone. Many theories attempt to explain Sergey's sudden appearance and disappearance. Some believe it could be a genuine case of time travel, where Sergey slipped through a rift in time. Others speculate it might have been a hoax or a modern legend. Still, some think he could have experienced a psychological condition that made him believe he was from another time. Regardless of the explanation, Sergey's story endures as one of the most compelling time travel tales in history. Number 13. The Stock Trader. If you suddenly gained a superpower, you'd likely use it for personal gain. At least I would. This makes the story of a man who allegedly used his time-traveling abilities to profit in the stock market quite believable. After all, many of us would seize the opportunity. Andrew Carlson's saga began in 2003 when he was apprehended by the FBI for an extraordinary reason. He had transformed an initial investment of $800 into an astounding $350 million in just 2 weeks through a series of improbably successful stock trades. Such a feat seems impossible without insider information, illicit manipulation, or, perhaps, a glimpse into the future. Carlson's trades raised red flags as he consistently selected stocks that inexplicably skyrocketed, investments that no other trader could have predicted with such precision. Convinced that he had insider knowledge, authorities detained him for questioning. During his interrogation, Carlson made a startling claim. He was not an insider trader, but a time traveler from the year 2256. He explained that he had journeyed back with foresight of future stock market movements, using this knowledge to amass his fortune. In a twist of fate, Carlson even offered to divulge historical facts about upcoming events, including the exact date the Iraq War would commence, in exchange for leniency. While Carlson's story is largely dismissed as a hoax or an urban legend, there remains a faction of believers who find his tale compelling. Number 12. When 3 boys traveled to medieval England. In 1957, 3 British Royal Navy cadets, William Lang, Michael Crowley, and Ray Baker, embarked on a routine orienteering exercise through the Suffolk countryside. Instead of a simple training mission, they found themselves inexplicably transported to medieval England. As the cadets strolled through the village of Kersey, they sensed something was amiss. The atmosphere felt unsettling, and the sights they encountered were anything but ordinary. Peering into a butcher shop, they were greeted by rotting oxen carcasses and a complete absence of modern counters. The entire village appeared eerily deserted. What struck them most was the disappearance of St. Mary's Church, the village's most prominent feature. This 14th century church, renowned for its towering spire, should have been visible from anywhere in the village, yet it was nowhere to be found during their visit. Years later, Lang and Crowley returned to Kersey with physical researcher Andrew Mackenzie, who hypothesized that their experience might be a case of retrocognition, a phenomenon where individuals inexplicably witness past events. Mackenzie's research suggested that the cadets had glimpsed Kersey as it was in the 1420s, a period when the village was recovering from the Black Death and thriving from the wool trade. This remarkable experience solidified the Kersey time slip as one of the most captivating time travel stories ever told. Number 11. A Swiss ring in a Ming Dynasty tomb. In 2008, a team of archaeologists in southern China made a shocking discovery: a tiny, mud-encrusted Swiss ring watch found in a 400-year-old Ming Dynasty tomb in Shaanxi. How could a timepiece, a product of 19th century Europe, end up in a tomb that had been sealed since the Ming Dynasty, which ended in 1644? The watch, small in size with its hands frozen at 10:06, bore inscriptions and a design indicative of craftsmanship long after the Ming Dynasty had faded into history, likely crafted in the 19th or 20th century. Yet here it lay, buried with an individual who lived centuries before. Was it a case of time travel, or perhaps a well-executed hoax? That's a mystery left for you to ponder. Number 10. The Vatican's secret time-traveling machine. Despite its small size, the Vatican is one of the most powerful and influential entities in the world. Within its walls, legends tell of the chronovisor, a device said to have the ability to view and even record events from the distant past. Allegedly created by Father François Brune, a French priest and theologian, the chronovisor was built in the 1950s by a clandestine team of scientists and intellectuals operating under Vatican secrecy. Described as a television for the past, the chronovisor purportedly allowed users to witness historical events in real time. Brune claimed to have seen monumental moments, including the crucifixion of Jesus Christ himself. While the existence of such a device stretches the bounds of belief, skepticism aside, the legend of the chronovisor continues to capture the imagination of many. Number 9. Jar Vorin, the interdimensional traveler. In 1851, a peculiar figure named Jar Vorin emerged in the small town of Frankfurt an der Oder, Prussia. Vorin claimed to hail from a land called Laxaria, an uncharted territory unfamiliar to any maps or scholars of the time, and he spoke a language that baffled the locals. When interrogated, Vorin described his homeland as part of a continent named Sakria, situated far beyond the known world's oceans. His quest to find a long-lost brother had taken him on a journey across vast distances that seemed to transcend our understanding of geography and time. Though Vorin could speak some German, his proficiency was limited. He claimed knowledge of 5 great continents: Sakria, Aflar, Aslar, Aller, and Upar, names that bear no resemblance to any earthly geography. His written language was equally perplexing, showing a coherent structure yet entirely alien to known scripts. While many dismissed Vorin as a lost traveler from a remote region, others speculated that he might be a visitor from a parallel universe. At a time when the concept of parallel universes was largely unheard of, Vorin's story closely aligns with modern quantum theories and multiverse speculation. Despite efforts to uncover his truth, the fate of Jar Vorin remains shrouded in mystery. Number 8. Time travel backed by science. Sergey Krikalev, often called the last Soviet citizen, isn't just a figure of history. He's a man who traveled in time, and his journey is backed by scientific evidence. During his 803 days aboard the Mir space station, Krikalev experienced the phenomenon of time dilation. Thanks to Einstein's theory of relativity, time passed just a tad slower for him in the vastness of space than it did for those of us on Earth. As a result, when he finally returned to Earth, Krikalev found himself 0.02 seconds younger than others born at the same time. While this difference might seem minuscule, it serves as concrete proof that time travel, in a sense, is indeed possible, at least when it comes to leaping forward into the future. Number 7. The Man in Times Square 1. Fateful night in the 1950s, an extraordinary event unfolded in the heart of Times Square, New York City. Amid the bustling crowd, a man appeared seemingly out of nowhere, his attire unmistakably from the 19th century. With mutton-chop sideburns, a top hat, and button shoes, he looked as if he had just stepped out of a time portal. Tragically, the man, later identified as Rudolph Fentz, was struck and killed by a car. In the aftermath, investigators combed through his pockets and unearthed a trove of oddities. A letter dated 1876, a brass token for a drink at a long-gone saloon, and business cards bearing his name, Rudolph Fentz. What baffled the detectives was the pristine condition of these items. They seemed untouched by time. Captain Hubert V. Ream of the NYPD soon discovered a man named Rudolph Fentz had vanished in 1876 after leaving for a walk. Further investigation revealed that this Fentz was the father of a man who had died just a few years prior, with all details matching, from his clothing to the missing persons report. For decades, this tale circulated as a chilling piece of evidence for time travel, despite the skepticism surrounding it. Today, it remains one of the most infamous time travel stories ever told. Number 6. The Man from 2030. In 2018, the internet was abuzz with the story of a man named Noah, an alleged time traveler claiming to hail from the year 2030, a year that doesn't seem too distant now, does it? With his face blurred and voice altered to protect his identity, Noah made several eye-popping predictions. He claimed that Donald Trump would be re-elected in 2020, that virtual reality technology would advance dramatically, cryptocurrencies would gain significant traction, and that humans would set foot on Mars by 2028. Though Noah's claims turned out to be a hoax, the story captivated the imaginations of tens of thousands of people, blurring the lines between reality and fiction in the realm of time travel. Number 5. The Complicated Rules of Space-Time Dilation. Sergey Avdeev, a Russian cosmonaut, stands among the select few who have technically traveled through time. Like his compatriot Sergey Krikalev, Avdeev experienced the fascinating effects of time dilation, as described by Einstein's theory of relativity. While orbiting the Earth at speeds of about 17,500 miles per hour, Avdeev's time and space caused him to age just a fraction more slowly than those of us grounded on Earth. When he eventually returned, Avdeev had effectively traveled 0.02 seconds into the future without even realizing it. While this time difference might seem trivial, it serves as a concrete example of how the laws of physics can bend our understanding of time itself. Number 4. The house that slips through time. In 1860, a man named Robert Palfrey encountered a curious phenomenon while walking along a lonely road near Rouen. He reported seeing a grand Georgian-style mansion materialize out of nowhere, only to vanish moments later. Over the years, numerous witnesses echoed Palfrey's strange experience, claiming to have spotted the same stately red brick manor house appearing and then dissolving into mist. These sightings have persisted over the decades, with the most recent encounter recorded in 2007. A couple driving along the same road claimed to have seen the elusive mansion, only for it to vanish when they turned back to take a closer look. For many locals, the Rouen mirage represents a perplexing case of time slips, where reality seems to fold in on itself. Number 3. An army of men. On the night of June 28, 1812, an extraordinary event unfolded near Ripley in Yorkshire. Anthony Jackson and Martin Turner were tending to cattle when they witnessed something utterly bizarre, an entire army of soldiers marching in eerie silence across a hilltop. Clad in white uniforms and led by a commanding figure in scarlet, the soldiers were followed by a second group in darker attire. Despite their numbers, the two armies appeared to interact peacefully before vanishing into a mist that obscured the nearby cattle. The chilling experience raises questions. Was this a paranormal phenomenon or a glimpse into the past? The choice, as always, is yours to make. Number 2. A time traveler from the year 6000. In 2018, the internet was captivated by the tale of a man claiming to be from the year 6000. This mysterious figure, with his face blurred to protect his identity, asserted that he had ventured far into the future. He painted a vivid picture of a world unrecognizable yet strangely familiar, where artificial intelligence governed society and humans lived in utopian cities seamlessly integrated with nature. The man claimed that time travel became a reality in the 21st century, with governments conducting secret experiments long before going public. One of his most compelling pieces of evidence was a photograph, supposedly taken in the year 6000, showing a breathtaking city of the future. Skeptics argued that the image could be a hoax or manipulation, but many were drawn in by his captivating narrative. He further warned that the future is not predetermined. Time travel had enabled certain individuals to attempt altering history, creating a tangled web of alternate timelines. He claimed his return was a warning about potential dangers ahead, urging humanity to be mindful of the paths they choose. With a striking photograph and a gripping tale, many were convinced that this man truly was a genuine time traveler. Number 1. A photo from the year 5000. It seems that many time travelers from the future come bearing grim tidings for those of us living in the present. Take, for instance, a man claiming to be from the year 5000. He painted a chilling picture of a world ravaged by catastrophe, where humanity struggles to survive in the aftermath of a catastrophic environmental collapse. This mysterious figure even presented a photograph, allegedly depicting a dystopian landscape. He claimed he was part of a top-secret experiment conducted by an unnamed government, granting him the ability to traverse time. During one of his missions, he found himself in the year 5000, standing on what was once Los Angeles, now submerged beneath the waves. Is this a hoax, or could there be some truth to his chilling tale? These accounts of time slips certainly provoke thought. What do you think? Which of these stories resonates most with you? Let me know in the comments. And don't miss what's appearing on the screen right now. Take care, everyone.